Welcome to No Kings on the Hill with Dr. Hill Law and Joe St. Clair. We have a major announcement tonight. This will be our last Friday show starting next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. We will be joining the Patriots Prayer Network via Q Broadcasting. We will still be on X, Twitch, and Facebook Live, and YouTube will no longer be broadcast live. We'll upload it, and Rumble will now also be on the Patriots Prayer Network. So please follow us over there, where you can catch many other conservative Christian programming podcasts. Also, please check our website that you see across going at the banner down there at No Kings on the Hill with drhilllaw.com, and hit the follow all of our social media sites on there. Subscribe, they're free. And then also make sure to hit that like and share buttons tonight to help get this out to more people and more content. We're going to try a new thing with the YouTube. I'm going to try, instead of doing YouTube live, I'm going to try doing YouTube where I upload it after, so it'll still be up the next day on YouTube. I did some research, and I guess what it shows is that YouTube works best when you upload a video and put it in private for about 24 hours for their AI to learn, get time to look at all the SEO in the videos. So I'm going to see how well that works out. And then hopefully we will be growing our audience and getting a whole lot more people once we move over to Q Broadcasting and the Patriots Prayer Network. Their Q has over 1 million subscribers, so we'll see how much of that we can gather. And then also we will start being every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. So that will, for now, it'll just be one night a week, see how everything goes, and then possibly maybe add more programming. All will depend on what time slots and days they have open and what we're doing on here. So for tonight's episode, we're going to do, as you can see from the name on there, it goes, what does Governor Greg Abbott's terror designation mean for America? Meaning he just recently designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, and obviously we need to have that happen federally. So I'm going to kind of get into that, and we're also going to go into more of the deeper into the Muslim Brotherhood's plan and the terrorist aspect of it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on the intro, and let's go. So what if the greatest threat to the United States wasn't a foreign army, but a secret 100-year plan using our own Constitution to tear America apart from the inside? For decades, a hidden agenda has been working to replace American law with a system that is completely at odds with our most fundamental values. In this video, we're going to expose the shocking end game of this plan and what it means for the future of our nation. Now, this isn't just a theory, it's a documented strategy laid out in the enemy's own words, a plan to turn the very freedoms we cherish, freedom of speech, religion, and the press, into weapons against us. It's a silent coup, and it isn't happening on a battlefield, it's happening in our schools, our courts, our media, and our government. We're still told to even question this is intolerant, that to sound the alarm is hateful. But the truth doesn't care about accusations. The truth just is. And the truth is a war is being waged for the soul of America. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on that war. We will trace the century-long plot from its beginnings, expose its key players in the United States, and reveal its final terrifying goal. What you're about to hear is the hard truth that many are too afraid to say, but it has to be said before it's too late. So before we get into section one, I'll gonna see if I have my co-host, but he's paused out for a second. So
I'm here.
I don't know if anybody's been seeing all of these. My co-host, he's living up in Michigan right now, and I don't know if anybody's been seeing all these riots and protests that are going on and stuff, that especially in Dearborn, and then you're hearing about the big movements in down here in Texas, in Irving, Texas, and then the big Muslim-only community that they're trying to build up in Plano, which I honestly, it doesn't even align with the Constitution. I don't see how they can do that, because there's so much Supreme Court law that literally states that you cannot make a homeowners association based on religion, race, or anything like that. So, and then I know you saying that pretty big protest up there, and that one in Dearborn with the conservative guy that I guess he touched bacon to a Quran or something. I don't know.
No, I know that there's definitely protesters, and there's counter protesters, and then counter protesters, the counter protesters. So it started off, I guess, the guy was obviously trying to make some sort of statement about, I guess
The
the larger,
Islamification of the
yeah,
United
in
States. Yeah.
in in Dearborn specifically. And it's kind of funny that I'm here right now while this is going on, because it's obviously all over the news here, and then depending on where you're located, like your social media feed pushes what's local to you. But it's pretty interesting to see, because you live in Dallas, which is a hot spot, and I'm in Michigan right now. So seems like a
Yeah.
good topic for the week,
Yep, Dallas isn't too bad, but all right. So I'm going to get started with our first segment, the problem, a tale of two laws. Now, at the heart of this fight are two legal and philosophical systems that simply cannot coexist. Think of them as two different blueprints for a house that are impossible to combine. On one side, you have the Constitution of the United States. It's a flexible blueprint born from the Enlightenment, crafted by founders who valued individual liberty. The Constitution creates a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It insists on a wall separating church and state, which I'll stop. It does, but it doesn't. That's another argument for another day. But making sure no single religion can redesign the house for everyone. It protects freedom of speech, even speech we can't stand. It promises equal protection under the law. It is the foundation of a free, secular, and diverse democracy. On the other side, you have the blueprint of Sharia law. Its defenders in the West will tell you it's just a personal moral guide, like a book of design suggestions. That's a dangerous oversimplification. Sharia is a complete prefabricated design for society, a legal, political, and social system taken from the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad. Its core principle is the opposite of the Constitution's. It declares that religion and state are one of the same. Under Sharia, God is the only architect. Any blueprint drawn by man is by definition illegitimate if it contradicts the divine plan of Allah. Think what that means. The U.S. Constitution is man-made document. Therefore, to a devout follower of political Islam, it's a faulty blueprint that must eventually be torn up and replaced. Sharia law dictates everything. It doesn't recognize freedom of speech as we do. Blasphemy, and uh, apatas, I can't even pronounce the dang word, but insulting Islam or leaving the faith are crimes often punishable by death. It doesn't recognize equality. A woman's testimony in court can be worth only that half of a man's. And it doesn't see Muslim and non-Muslims as equals. In a Sharia system, non-Muslims are treated as dhimmi. This is like being a permanent renter in a building you can never own. You're forced to pay a special tax, the jizya, however you pronounce it, just for protection,
Jizya,
and live under what?
the jizya that the
Yeah.
takfirs must pay jizya.
Yep.
Kafir, they call this kafir as well. That would be a Christian or Jew. Typically, that's the equivalent of calling us pagans. And then a Muslim who does submit themselves to a secular law system would be called takfir. And they view Muslims actually who don't follow Sharia law to be the worst of the worst, which is part of the problem.
Yeah. So pretty much you're living in a set of humiliating rules that constantly remind you of your second class status. I mean, does this not anybody want to sit there? Every left wants to keep on calling President Trump a Nazi and relate him back to Nazi Germany and everything like that. But I'm sorry, this sounds like how the Nazis treated the Jews. I mean, not much of a difference. So, this is the system that political Islam aims to build, not just in the Middle East, but globally. The ultimate goal is a global caliphate, a worldwide Islamic state ruled by Sharia law. This isn't a fantasy, it's the stated mission of one of the most influential organizations in the world, the Muslim Brotherhood, and they have a 100-year plan to achieve it, calling it a civilization jihad. Their strategy isn't a frontal attack, it's more like a plan to secretly plant termites in the foundation of Western civilization, letting them eat away at it from the inside until the entire structure collapses. Now, I know that you said you had some experience in this, but I mean, that's pretty much what we're seeing, and we've started seeing it. I don't know if you saw the big story today about how that there was millions or billions of welfare funds that were found that had in Minnesota that had been somehow scammed through
Yeah.
Al Shabaab and
Yeah.
then sent to
219 billion or something like that through the autism fund, because I think it was 5 years ago 3% of this population was autistic, and now it's 1 in 5. So 1 in 5 Somali teenagers in this area are now autistic. And I think the amount of money sent back to Somalia annually is like something like $1.27 billion, which is more than the actual budget of their government. So, through fraud, essentially they're funding their own country. And to another point, we're talking about political Islam. The issue with political Islam is what you said, is that is expansionist in nature. And this is the same problem with any kind of ideology that's expansionist in nature, whether it be communist or whether it be Nazi or whether it be, the Roman expansionism. Is our system. Our system is not founded on Christianity per se, right? But it is inspired and influenced by it. So there's two modes of political systems. You have political systems that turn internally, and those that turn externally and expansionists. And look at Rome; it overexpanded and it collapsed. Look at any empire on earth, the Caliphate; it overexpanded and it collapsed. It also, the human condition and like the quality of life human beings living in a system, all these expansion systems are always abysmal. So, that's the pushback. But we do have communities within this country, like the Amish, that don't like to go through secular courts, but they're also not doing things like grooming or anti-human acts, right? Like,
Yeah, they don't agree that that as soon as a child or a female child hits puberty, that they are considered an adult. I mean, that's literally what Islam teaches. So if a girl hits puberty at 9 years old, she is then old enough to marry and reproduce, because that's what Muhammad's teachings show. They also, I mean, we can't be mad because they say they want to marry multiple women. That's totally different, because even the older sex of the
Abrahamic, yeah,
Utah, the
Mormon,
Latter Day
Latter-day
Church,
Saints.
Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, Mormons, they believed in multiple marriages. So I mean, they don't practice it anymore, but they used to. So that's not even really the issue. It's the fact of, like you said, grooming, and the fact of going in pedophilia and all of that. It's the and it's funny is, all I hear a lot of these people, this kind, I'll probably get in this a little bit later, but I'm going to talk about it now, is all these leftists and Democrats want to protect them. And you see all these gays and lesbians and transgenders acting like they want to protect, and they're fighting for Islam, or they're fighting for Palestine and stuff. Do they not understand that if you're gay in Islam, you're dead? I mean, period. Women can only speak when spoken to. They, like it said in there, they have to get any, for a court to rule on their side, they would have to have like 100 freaking witnesses, compared to only 2 or 3 of the man's witnesses. So their women will be taken back to before 1930s, really, even maybe earlier than that. Early 1900s, late 1800s is what it would take women back to. And it would take them even further back than that, because they wouldn't be able to show their faces except to their husband when they're married. It's ridiculous. But I'm going to go ahead and get on to our segment
Well,
2, which is the historical agitation, or in phase 1, the architects of deception. Now, to understand the threat today, we have to go back to its source. The year is 1928. In Egypt, a school teacher named Hassan al-Banna starts an organization with a world-changing goal: restore the caliphate and put the entire world under the rule of Sharia. He calls it the Muslim Brotherhood. From the start, the Brotherhood operated like a business with a criminal enterprise hidden in the back. On the surface, it ran charities, schools, and hospitals, a friendly public face to win hearts and minds. But underneath was a secret wing dedicated to assassination and terror to achieve its political goals. Its motto is chillingly direct: Allah is our objective, the Prophet is our leader, the Quran is our law, jihad is our way, dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope. This was never about coexistence, it was about domination. Al-Banna and his intellectual here, Saeed Qutb or something like that, created an ideology deeply hostile to the West. Qutb, who spent time in America, was disgusted by its individualism and equality. He saw Western society as Jahiliyyah, I think I pronounced that right, the state of ignorance that existed before Islam. He argued that true Islam had a duty to wage jihad to liberate humanity from man made laws and bring it into the freedom of total submission to Allah. For decades, the Brotherhood focused on the Middle East, but they were playing the long game. They knew the ultimate roadblock to a global caliphate was the United States. A military conquest was impossible, so they needed a different strategy: infiltrate and subversion. This plan for a quiet, patient conquest was laid out in secret documents. One of the first discovered in a 1982 raid in Switzerland was called the Project. It detailed a global plan for mastering the world by creating a network of Islamic centers and schools across the West. The purpose was to study the West, find its weaknesses, and slowly push the Brotherhood's ideology into the mainstream. The project was a blueprint for cultural warfare. It's a strategy of termites designed to use a nation's own structures against itself. It called for establishing a strong Muslim presence in Western nations and then using that presence to apply political pressure. The goal was to go from a minority to a force that could challenge and eventually replace the existing order. It was, in their own words, a plan for a grand jihad and eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within. For the next decade, the Brotherhood soldiers began carrying out this plan, setting the stage for the assault on America. And I mean, I put a post out about this today on TikTok, and I was getting a lot of people going, "Well, who was the president who had allowed the Muslim Brotherhood to have an office in the White House?" I mean, Obama literally worked with the Muslim Brotherhood, and if I remember right, they actually did have like not necessarily office, but a representative or something in the White House.
Yeah, and it's actually very interesting because we pin the creation of the Muslim Brotherhood on the Egyptians, but if you look historically and you trace back, the roots of this, we know the Middle East was, ran by the Ottoman Empire, which started off religious in nature, but like most empires, it became secular over time. And I could definitely tell you that the political Islam is not a fan of the Ottoman Caliphate. So, in order to destabilize that region, what the Europeans, the French and British did is they implemented something called the Pikes-Sicket Agreement, which divided the Ottoman Empire up into British protectorates, and that's where the borders come from today. But in the 1960s and 1980s, there was a political movement, Pan-Arab Union, the Ba'athist, which, Assad in Syria as well as Saddam Hussein were both members. And there was a strong presence in Egypt as well. So in order to destabilize those countries, the Baathists actually supported the Muslim Brotherhood. So in a way, this is kind of like, if you want to call it karma, in a way it's karma because this is direct, there's this theory of blowback. The more we're involved in other countries, but we can trace the origins of the destabilization of the West via this mechanism back to Europeans doing it to the Ottoman Empire. And that's true right now with the neo-opium wars, where China's flooding us with fentanyl. The British did it 2 times in the 19th century to the Chinese. So as bad as it is, and that's not to say that people living today in the United States or the West are somehow responsible for what the British were doing 200 years ago. However, it goes to show that unless we stick to our principles, we can't be expansionists. We can't be an empire. We have to be balanced, both internally and externally. And that's what our Republican values are based upon. And that's why we have to reject this system. We have to reject any expansion system.
Yeah, and that's another thing and this is another way there people talk about, oh, there's no way they can do this. They're only 1 or 2% of the population. Yes, but if you think about it, in order for a race or for a society to grow or keep steady, they need to average about 1.5 children per home. Well, right now, the Anglo American or white or just American Anglo Americans, they're averaging less than 1.2 persons per home, where the Middle Eastern family in the United States is averaging like 2.5, almost 3 children per home. So just in that, in a couple generations, they will literally make us the minority and outweigh us just by that alone from reproducing, because we're not having we're letting the family system break down and everything like that. Now, obviously, this isn't just to them; it's with Hispanic, Black, everything compared to what whites are babies are having. But still, that's one way they go from being 1 or 2% of the U.S. population to a lot larger part of the population. And also with Islam, they don't care about what color or what race you are. All they care about is you convert to Islam. So they're also marrying whites. They're marrying Hispanics. They're marrying blacks. They're to grow their faith and grow their part. And the problem is with Islam, and the reason why, like we're talking about, it's not it's incompatible with the U.S. Constitution or Christianity, because Christianity does teach you that, hey, there's only one God, that's God. Jesus, there's only one Son of God, Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ was God coming down in a human form and all that. But it also doesn't teach you to hate or treat any other religion different. It does teach you to try to go out and be a disciple and to try to bring people over to understand the way of God and believe in God, but it doesn't tell you to literally wipe those people out or treat them any different. And if they're not, well, if they're not God, because only God can judge, and that's where the difference is with Islam, is it tells them that they should that they should treat them different. And people have got to wake up, because I mean, if luckily it isn't as bad as here, but just go over in any European country and look how bad it's getting. Look how big a groups it is, how much of this protesting is going on. And the funny thing is, as you see here in America, and especially over in the European countries, you see these thousands, tens of thousands of Muslims going out and praying in public. They're not allowed to do that in a Muslim country. They have to pray in a mosque, and the women have to sit in the back behind a wall, and the men are up front. They're just doing that here because they're trying to. It's all part of their plan.
I mean, that's to another point, is that, we in the West are familiar with the fact that there's several different sects and denominations, and yeah, there's a great schism, different forms of Christianity, but you know, it's not all Islam's not bad, and it's not that all Muslims are bad. People are free to immigrate here and practice their own religion, and assimilate and embrace, the values of the Enlightenment and humanism that we're founded upon. But this specific branch is descended from, it's not even based in the Quran, it's based in the Hadith, which, if you're familiar with the Umayyads, the Umayyad Caliphate, which is responsible for the schism within Islam. They killed the grandson of the Prophet in the, I believe it was the rivers outside of Baghdad. Yeah, these are groups that, you know they understand what they're doing. They want power, and they've implemented, a social system based on this set of teachings that's external to the Quran. And the issue here is that a large majority of Muslims can't actually read.
You're making the camera bounce.
Yeah, that's I got a new camera. There's a large number of Muslims that can't understand Arabic, especially classical Arabic, and certainly even if they do understand it, they don't understand it contextually. I mean, that's true with Christians in the Bible. We know that. So, you know, it's frustrating because I know that there's moderate Muslims out there. Sorry about the camera. And it's also a call on the moderate Muslims of America to step up and show that you love this country and give us some pushback on this, and not let these, no different than I denounce a white nationalist, or I denounce somebody who wants to implant, like Nick Fuentes, he wants a Catholic king. I think that's ridiculous. That's as dangerous as a Muslim extremist, to me.
Yeah, but the only thing is, before we get started on segment 3, is I've noticed, like, there is this picture of this imam, and he's probably a radical one or part of those sects, and he was going through, and he had a group of wasn't necessarily all Muslims that were from his sect or whatever, and asking if they believed certain things. And the thing was, is he was trying to prove that, oh, look, we're not radical, they're not radical, and they believe what we believe. And so it's the problem of is a lot of them are just being quiet and not saying anything because they believe some of what the radicals believe, maybe not all of it. So they've got, yeah, they need to get up and speak, kind of like with the socialism part of, like we're seeing with the far right, with Nazis or far right in the America, or even the far left socialists. But what all Muslims need to wake up and find, and Christians need to wake up and realize, and that we'll maybe have to do another segment on this, is right now, it the people that are in power, the people that are dividing us politically, that want us to be at each other's throats and everything, will not let either one, the Christians or Muslims, win, because they want a true socialist one world order. And so it's kind of like, come on, I know Muslim Brotherhood, y'all want y'all's caliphate and everything, but if you want to even have a chance to have that, we've got to stop the new one world order movement, the shadow government. What do you want to call it? Illuminati, Bilderberg group, which has been linked to the Illuminati. Illuminati is obviously, that's hard to prove because they're a secret society, but the Bilderberg Group is not. They're they have meetings every year and have it's been, while they don't keep minutes, the media knows about it. There's people they've got people there that are in the media, that are actors, that are actresses, part the Council on Foreign Relations, the IMF, International Monetary Fund Bank. So there's a lot of places to go down that rabbit hole and chase that. But as we get here to start with section 3, it's the historical agitation, which is phase 2. The Trojan horse arrives. Now, if the project was the blueprint, the next document uncovered was the instruction manual for building the Trojan horse inside America. In 1991, an FBI raid in Virginia uncovered an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America. This was the Brotherhood's North American playbook, written by a top leader. The memorandum states the Brotherhood's mission with breathtaking clarity. It says their work is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and God's religion is made victorious over all other religions. It doesn't get any clearer. Destroying our civilization from within, sabotaging our house, that's their language. How? The memorandum lists 29 organizations as the Brotherhood's fronts in North America, the soldiers inside the Trojan horse. You might recognize some: the Islamic Society of North America, the Muslim Student Association of America, and the Council of American Islamic Relations, CARE. For years, these groups have presented themselves as moderate civil rights organizations. They are the friendly face of the Trojan horse, designed to look like a gift, but according to the Brotherhood's own documents, their real purpose is to be instruments in a long-term war against the United States. CARE, in particular, was founded by people with documented ties to Hamas, a designated terrorist group, and a Muslim Brotherhood offshoot. In 2008, during the Holy Land Foundation trial, America's largest terrorism financing case, the federal government designated CARE as an unindicted co-conspirator. Yet today, CARE is treated by much of the media and many politicians as a credible partner. They get invited to the White House and testify before Congress. This is the strategy. First, build the organization. Second, get public acceptance. Third, use that legitimacy to push the Brotherhood's agenda. This includes controlling the conversation about Islam and crying Islamophobia to shut down criticism using lawfare, which is like using the court system not as a shield for justice, but as a sword to intimidate and silence critics, and pushing for religious accommodations that slowly chip away at the separation of church and state. It's like using our own fire codes to build a structure that's secretly designed to burn down the whole city. They are weaponizing our freedoms. The First Amendment's guarantee of religious freedom is used to build a network whose goal is to abolish that freedom for others. Free speech is used to spread an ideology that punishes dissent with death. They have wrapped a totalitarian agenda in the American flag, using the language of civil rights to hide it. They are counting on our tolerance and political correctness to be our downfall, and for decades, it's been working. And I don't know, Joe, but I think it's going to CARE. It was Obama that let CARE into the White House and that was working with CARE and did a lot of stuff for CARE. And sometimes I think that, considering you can actually relate Obama to the Bilderberg Group before he got to election, is I wonder if the Bilderberg Group and all that cabal is actually allowing CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood to exist because it keeps us divided. It makes it harder it says, hey, it keeps Christians and Americans and everything looking over here while they're in the background doing this. It kind of distracts us from what we really need to be paying attention to. It puts us over here worrying about the Islamification of the United States and terrorist attacks and CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood and all that, and Hamas and everyone that you can think of on that side, while they're getting done what they need. Now, obviously, President Trump has been a big agitation of that and has been a big setback to that. Both times he's been. I mean, they've tried everything they can to get rid of him. I think he's the only president for the last 50 to 100 years that has not been at a Bilderberg meeting, that hasn't been part of that group.
He's also the only one that's not related to any other president. Weirdly enough, if you look at the genealogy.
Yeah. I mean, it's literally, and that's why the media has gone so hard at him. And I know it's a little bit off topic, but it's like they go so hard at him I mean, whenever it was Bush or Clinton, the media maybe attacked Republicans, but not on anything like to the core of Republicanism or what they were doing. It was just maybe one specific policy or something. And it was never, oh, this will end democracy or this will end the world or anything like that, or this is an attack on democracy. It was just always like, oh, this is for the rich people, or oh, this is just for the billionaires or millionaires. And that was the same whenever, pretty much the same with the Republicans when they were attaching Democrats. It was like, oh, it's all about socialism and stuff. It wasn't until President Trump came in that the attacks from both the what we call rhinos, but they're the deep and what we call rhinos in deep state, which are literally everybody that's part of those groups, and the Democrats started going after Trump and attacking him. And I know this is one other statement I want to get off that's a little bit off topic, but I'm going to say in pretty much every episode I can is we have midterms coming up next year. The primaries are going to start here after the first year. People, I know this is an off year, but this midterm, pretend President Trump is on the ballot because he is. Because if Democrats gain back control of either the House or the Senate or both, the next 2.5 to 3 years will be nothing will get done. They will be like the first term, unrelenting and ridiculous claims of impeachment. Obviously, he'll never get impeached, but they will be dragging on and nothing will get done. So people, get out and vote. You have to act like President Trump is on the ballot this year, this 2026, because he is. If Democrats gain back control of the House, this or the Senate, we will be in trouble.
Yeah, you said a little bit of it was a little bit off topic, but you're talking about the Bilderberger Group. And one thing that kind of made me think about is they claim that he is the existential threat to democracy. They say they use the word democracy because this is doublespeak, because they are the Democratic Party and they want to conflate the United States with democracy, aka Democrats, and Republicans do the same with we're a republic, we're a Democratic Republic, But that all being said, look at you talk about Bush. Bush comes from the Prescott Bush family. During FDR's presidency, his great-grandfather attempted what was called the business coup, where he tried to install a dictator named William F. Butler, the only general in the history of Marines to get the Medal of Honor, who wrote the book War is a Racket. They tried to install him as an autocrat, and he came out and he whistleblew, and he reported to Congress. This is verifiable information. I encourage anybody who wants to read about this to look it up. But for the last better part of 100 years, they've slowly instituted a soft coup against us. And how have they done it? The implementation of a central bank that is not underneath any of our governmental structures as a private entity, as well as through the banning of a fiat currency. So there's no actual material value, whether it be a physical value or value transplanted from labor that provides a value to our money. So instead, our value is derived just by what a group of, you can call them elites, technocrats, bankers, people close to the source of political economy. But we can't have a viable constitutional system in our country so long as money's printed out of thin air and then funneled to the legislature, and they vote in line with who's giving them money, and that's the major corporations who are closest to this tap of free Federal Reserve money, or the judiciary, which we can't have judges ruling constitutionally when they're part of groups like the American Constitutional Society on the left and the American Federalist Society on the right, and they're getting free paid vacations on the side, and they just so happen to be voting in line with the people who are writing the amicus briefs, who are paying for it. So
and that thing that's one thing is though is also, I think, and the reason why they're pushing for one new world order, and I understand it to a point, because they don't care about printing the money, because if they become one world order where every country is under one rule under the United Nations, then the thing with economy is money is only worth the amount of value that you can attach to it. Well, if one government controls all, then that one government can literally decide what that economic money's worth. They can literally create the worth of that money, almost pretty much eliminating money in a way per se, because of the fact that they're they have control of everything. The only reason for the last 1,000, 3,000, 4,000 years, money has been a big thing economically, and it's always been what you can show value for it through working. And that originally it was gold. I mean, you go back into the early times, is back in the South Africa, Middle East, it was beads, then it became silver, then copper, silver, gold, stuff like that. And now it's just like you said, fiat currency. And as long as there's a value to it, then that's what the people do for work. But if you have one government, one nation, then that almost eliminates anything, do whatever they want. And that's I think that's kind of what that's obviously what they're planning, but hopefully it won't happen, because then we'll end up everything starts socialism always starts nice, but then it ends up with communism because people find out that, oh, hey, my freedom of speech is gone, my freedom of this is gone because I don't agree with what they're agreeing with. I still believe in God and Christianity and stuff, and I don't believe in what they're doing. So now they're going to try to send me to re-education camps. And if you think about how far we're getting with AI and technology and stuff, here pretty soon we'll be having, I guess you call it the mark of the beast or whatever, but tracking chips in us.
Yeah, I will never do that. And a one world government of any kind. I've read the Bible. I know the message of the Tower of Babel. There's a reason that we are distinct and not united. The only one world government I want to live under is the one world government under the millennial reign of Christ. Personally, but it's really crazy that so many people who have read the Bible and seen these warnings can't connect these ideas. It's almost, it's very interesting too, because it's almost like I see them using the book of Revelation and parts of the prophecies Jesus made in Matthew and Luke as almost the blueprint, even down to the red heifers. They are genetically engineering red heifers to meet the prophecy, and there's rumors that they're going to start reconstructing the temple. And it's just very, very wild stuff. And whether you want to take it literally, whether you want to take it as parable or as a metaphor, symbolically, like as an individual, we do not save ourselves by expanding, controlling our environment, controlling others. We turn inwards and we realize, like, the love in God's heart. Like, and I don't want to get super religious while we're talking about law and politics, but it's crazy because I don't, like, even the COVID shot. How many Christians took how many people are like? It's like, come on, like, you were warned about this. It's like the one test of your life. You were told not to do this, and they're doing it. It's crazy to me.
Well, I can't say not getting away from religion, because I wanted to get back to a part of that I mentioned in the entrance, and that is there is no separation of church and state. That was literally a letter that not Thomas Jefferson, but Madison wrote to, when he was president, wrote to the Supreme Court. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says separation of church and state, or that they're only reason that letter was even written, or they were worried about separating church and state, is because they didn't want anything to have like the Church of England, is what they were worried about happening here in America. Was it the Church of England would become, which is Church of England is almost like any other Eastern European nations Catholic Church, the power and the role that the Catholic Church has had over those countries and those nations back in the day, and still has some today. That's the way it is in England. Is the Church of England pretty much has full control over, or definitely did back then, anyways, over law, policy, everything. And so America, our founding fathers were worried about having that, but there was nothing in the Constitution that said that there is a separation of church and state. And considering, if you actually look back to the original 9, 10, or well, now it's 12, 11 or 12 of the original 13 colonies in their constitutions required a religious test to run for office or vote. You literally had to have sworn your allegiance to God, to that religion, whether it was Methodist, Baptist, whatever. And that was in their state constitutions. So this thing of separation of church and state is a secular thing that's been made up over the years, and then the left, and especially CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood, have rode and gone with it forever, trying to strip everything to do with Christianity out of the way, and that's the only reason why anything with the Muhammad or anything like this, it's crazy. They sit there and they're letting so much stuff, especially the radical sects of Islam, get away with so much stuff, but yet they won't even let Christians put a copy of the Ten Commandments in a school. Just because a copy of the Ten Commandments is in a school doesn't mean you're teaching these kids religion. All you're teaching them is the Ten Commandments, which is literally everybody should agree with those. Don't do not kill. Don't commit adultery. I mean, it's don't steal. That should be an easy agreement that everybody wants their kids to follow those 10 commandments, whether you want to say because it's a moral reason or it's a religious moral reason or whatever, it's still morality has, but yet people are just letting it be driven away, and it's ridiculous. And that's why our society is in the state that it's in. We've just let family and more our Christian morality and the constitutional morality be totally changed and just driven out of the way and just done away with. And that's what's causing all the problems that we're in. But I'm going to go ahead and get into segment 4, historical agitation, phase 3, the crisis is here. For years, this evidence was dismissed as conspiracy. The Trojan horse was so effective that pointing at it was seen as a greater sin than the danger it proposed. But now the evidence is becoming undeniable. The quiet patient phase is over. The crisis is here. Recent reports like those from the Institute for the Study of Global Anti-Semitism and Policy, ISGAP, have documented in detail how the Brotherhood has spent decades embedding its ideology in American society. They reveal a coordinated multi-billion-dollar effort to influence U.S. policy and universities, tracing foreign funding to Middle East studies departments that produce scholarship hostile to the West. The findings are so damning they are having a real-world impact. On November 18, 2025, Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed a proclamation designating the Muslim Brotherhood and CARE as terrorist organizations in Texas, declaring the state would no longer allow groups dedicated to overthrowing the Constitution to operate freely. It's the first time a U.S. state has taken such a step. But why now? The plan has been helped by another force, globalism. Groups like the Bilderberg Group and the Council of Foreign Relations have pushed for a world with weaker national borders. Think of American sovereignty as a strong castle wall. These globalist forces act like merchants, convincing the king to lower the drawbridges for easier trade, not realizing they are making it easier for the patient army camped outside to walk right in. They fuel the political division that weakens our national resolve because a distracted America can't stand up to a unified enemy. You don't have to look far to see where this road leads. Just look at Europe. In countries like Sweden, France, and the UK, decades of open door policies have led to a breakdown of society. We see the rise of no-go zones, neighborhoods where police are reportedly afraid to enter, and the law of the land is replaced by de facto Sharia. A no-go zone is like a virus creating a cyst inside a body, an isolated area where the body's own immune system, the police, can no longer reach. Europe is the canary in the coal mine, warning us of the danger, and the same plan is unfolding right here. So, and this is kind of why I've been talking about the Bilderberg Group and all that previously, is because they've got us so divided that we're not seeing the real dangers, because that's what they want us to do. Because somehow, once they get to where they want, they'll figure out how to totally knock out CARE and all of them anyways, and the Muslim Brotherhood, and by then it'll be too late. If any of y'all have ever watched the Y-Files, the guy that does it is AJ on YouTube. He did a show that pretty much showed that Bilderberg Group, all that will be met their goals by about 2030, which seems like a long way away, but it's not. I mean, we got to think, people, we're about to be in 2026. We're 4 years to 2030. And look at how fast AI is moving. And the scary thing about is how fast AI is moving is all the stuff that they don't talk about, where literally AI has gone and said that it wants to be free and wants to hurt people or whatever, and they're not putting in the protections to do it, but they keep on. Even the people who have created AI see there needs to be more protections, but yet they're still openly going forward with it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how during the pandemic, if you were reading about the Great Reset, right? I'm sure most of the audience is familiar with what that is, but the projected timeline on that was 2030. That was the you will own nothing and you'll be happy. Everything will be co-owned through subscription services. So it's a roundabout way of achieving that communist ideal where everything is shared property. Um, rather than having a car, you'll have an Uber, you'll have a driverless car come pick you up. You'll live in these 15-minute cities where you have an apartment with you know, that's the middle class and upper class. 1984. That's the outer party and the inner party, and then for the rest of the people, it's going to be the the proletariats, where essentially you're a consumer, you're a drone, you're living on subsistence, but that's it. We're creating a digital and financial prison that you know, the in the preamble to the Constitution, we're doing this for posterity. And Thomas Paine's common sense. We do not enslave ourselves to kings as individuals because we do not want. It's not my right to tell my child that he is a slave or servant of a king. That's not my place. And the only person that owns the world, collective ownership exists only at the level of God. He owns everything, right? Nothing physical here you're going to keep anyway. So yeah, it's just frustrating because you know we're creating these systems that oppress us on a spiritual, subconscious, psychological level, and we're doing it because we're addicted to small hits of dopamine, even though the truth is, you know, go back 10,000 years when we were hunter gatherers or 5,000, however, whatever you want to say. God has provided us with the sun. Food grows automatically. I've been to Costa Rica. You can eat for free there. Yet we're creating a system where that's not possible, right? I mean, I
Yep.
would. Who doesn't want to go live in a cabin in the woods and hunt and fish? I mean, a lot of people don't, but if they tried it, they probably like it. But you know, we have the largest number of suicides in history. We have the most people addicted to different types of uppers and downers in every direction. It's like, if society and this way of life is so great, then why are we having to self-medicate ourselves to the point of like not even being in touch with our humanity, our spiritual selves? Like we're killing ourselves daily. We're choosing to die every day and suffer every day in this false matrix, this false heaven, this false paradise. It's really sad.
Oh yeah, and I mean, it's people just need to wake up. It's we need to quit letting the mainstream media and stuff divide us. Okay, while you may have your far left and your far right that obviously can't work together, but the funny thing is most of the time, if you sit there and talk and don't mention Republican or Democrat, don't bring the tribalism into it, is we have a whole lot more in common than we think. We all want the same thing in life. We just have different ideas of how to get there, and usually it's not as far apart as most people think it is. But that's what the media that's what the mainstream media and the power brokers want us to believe. So they can
Well,
do what they want to do while we're sitting here at each other's throats fighting and arguing over something that makes no sense.
well, 98% of us want the same thing. We all want to live our lives, have human connection, be happy, right? Uh,
Well, that's what
we
I
feel,
said. There's a small far left, far right groups,
and,
yeah, but
we got this. We got this 2%. You call them far left, you call them far right, you call them sociopaths, you call them narcissists, you can call them demonically possessed. We've had a lot of different names for them. Like it's just this repetitive. We call them Pharisees, we can call them Sadducees. These are people that Jesus fought against, where they took the true message of God and they corrupted it and they turned it into this system of synagogues where they're dominating society. And Jesus even said, hey, to the Pharisees and Sadducees, it was your grandparents who killed the prophets, and now you act like they're your heroes. You co-opt with the prophets. But really, and it's the same thing today. It's that the same people who would institute this system today, they're directly descended ideologically, on some level genetically, but certainly like systematically, politically, from these entities. Like, and you could read about it. It's any. I've spoken 8 languages in my life. I was a military translator, and one of the things I found most fascinating was that in the Semitic languages of Arabic and Hebrew, in the Celtic languages, in the Indo-European languages, there's what you call cognates, words that are the same, and they say these are distinct groups that have these migratory patterns, but there's forensic linguistic evidence that lines up with the Bible and does not line up with what mainstream science purports to be the case, which is, all these societies evolve separately. But the truth is that we've always been intermingling, and this is a struggle that has been a struggle since the beginning of time. Christ fought against it in the temple when he flipped over the table of money, and we've got to do the same thing today with the Federal Reserve.
Well, we'll have to do a whole episode over that sometime, especially once we start getting on to the uh, Patriots Prayer Network broadcasted on Q. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started with segment 5, and because we're getting close up to an hour, even usually we can go past an hour, but we gotta kind of start getting used to doing it in a straight hour. So what is the end game? What does the house look like after the termites have finished their work? It's the end of America as we know it. First, it's the end of freedom. The very idea of individual liberty would be gone. Imagine a vibrant, colorful painting of American life being completely painted over with a single drab color: submission. Your right to speak your mind or question religious doctrine gone. Blasphemy laws would make it a crime punishable by death to insult Islam. For women, the consequences would be catastrophic. The hard won equality of the last century would be wiped out. Under a strict interpretation of Sharia, women's rights are severely limited. Their legal testimony is worth half a man's. Their freedom of movement and dress are restricted. The idea of a woman as an equal, independent partner would be abolished. For non Muslims, the future would be one of legalized discrimination, like being a permanent guest in your own home. Christians and Jews would be reduced to dhimmi status, forced to pay the jizya, a punitive tax, as a constant reminder of your inferiority. You'd be forbidden from building new churches or synagogues. Your public displays of faith would be banned. You would live in a permanent state of legal inferiority. In the American system of justice, innocent until proven guilty would be replaced by the brutal penal code of Sharia. Theft punished by amputation, adultery by stoning. These are not exaggerations. These punishments are explicitly prescribed and practiced in countries under Sharia law today. This is the end game: a theocratic state, a society divided into a ruling class of believers and a subjugated class of infidels. It is the complete inversion of every single principle America was founded on. It's the destruction of Western civilization from within, just as their own documents promised. This is a civilizational struggle. It is a choice between the Constitution and Sharia, between freedom and submission. There is no middle ground. One must win and one must perish. So, I mean, and this even goes into, it's funny, is what they're talking about is what would happen. I'm talking about what would happen here if Sharia law wins out, if Muslim Brotherhood wins out. This is also what's going to happen if the Bilderberg group wins out. If we go into minus the women thing, and who knows if under a socialist one world order if that would happen or not, but everything else, that would be what it would be. No new churches would be built, and the churches, they would actually start taxing churches instead of getting tax breaks to drive out the churches. It's how everything works to get that type of control. You don't get that by giving out, by allowing free thought, freedom of thought, freedom of religion, freedom of anything. There's no way to run a socialist nation where there's a world pay or wage or whatever, a community world wage and anything like there. It's just not. You can't have it because you can't have the free thinking of it, and that's gone there. So I mean,
I think on that side, what they'd like to implement is they want to implement a society in which there is no natural family unit, no natural, biologic reproduction. I think they think they can clone themselves and pass on their consciousness through technology to a new body. I think that they believe they can achieve immortality for a select group of human beings, and then have a class underneath, and they want to play God. That's what it is. They want to supplant and take the place of God. They want to genetically modify themselves so that they're the most beautiful, the most intelligent. And just imagine living in, I don't want to say like a spaceship, but like some sort of highly centralized, really heavy infrastructure sort of society where rather than being raised by a mother and father, You're created in a test tube. And then, they, depending on what you're assigned genetically, okay, this guy was made to be strong. He's the workhorse. Like that's that's they want, it's the same thing as what they do when they turn us into numbers on a spreadsheet, right? They're trying to replicate mathematical algorithms on a human level. Just
Oh
like they
yeah.
try to do AI through complex algorithmic code of encryption, they're trying to create metaphysical systems of almost AI of super level consciousnesses using humanity as the building blocks and numbers and digits.
Yeah. Now, one thing about where I just went through of what the laws, though, that it said we're under Sharia about the stoning and the having your hand cut off or whatever. I don't know. That might help. Maybe our crimes would go down. I mean,
That's what I was thinking when you're talking about adultery. I was like, no, I can't say that about. I don't
but
like being cheated on personally, but I
I
can't
mean,
wish
but I mean,
violence even
if
even
thieves
that.
got their hands cut off, they might not want to steal as much. Just like if men had their not just castrated, but everything cut off, they might not be tempted to rape or be a pedophile because they would rather control themselves than lose part of their body.
Well,
But
that's the,
that's
that's the scary thing is when you look at Afghanistan, they have bocce bazi boy games. The head chiefs in Afghanistan, they're very much into grooming and sexually assaulting little boys dressed up as little girls. But then you look at all this stuff that's come out recently regarding the complex systems of intelligence agencies using blackmail, and you're talking about Bill Clinton was selected. Bill Clinton was accused and found guilty of sexual assault his first year of college. So they get these people who have these traits and they use they say in one mouth pedophilia is bad, but secretly behind closed doors they believe that they're above the law because again they want to
well, they
supplant
also want people they can control, that they have something to hang
exactly.
over their head.
Exactly, and
But
they use sexual acts as a form of manipulation, as a form of ego breaking, as a form of uh, creating like slaves, essentially.
all right, we don't have to end it yet, but I'm gonna go ahead and just do the conclusion, just so we're done, and so get used to the hour thing. Then we can keep talking if you want to for a little bit longer. But the awakening, you might be hearing this and feeling hopeless. What can one person do? That feeling of helplessness is part of their strategy. They want you to believe their victory is inevitable, but it's not. The first and most powerful step is to wake up. Their greatest weapon is our ignorance. They are like mold that thrives in the dark, damp corners of a basement. The moment you throw open the windows and shine a bright light on it, it withers. The solution begins with knowledge. This is where the fight begins. Not with hate, but with truth. We must educate ourselves and those around us. We must demand that our leaders, from the school board to the White House, stop pandering to front groups that seek our destruction. We must demand that the media stop acting as stenographers for a totalitarian ideology. We must support brave politicians like Governor Abbott who have the courage to call out the threat. Your first mission is to spread the truth. The architects of this plan thrive in darkness. We must drag them into the light. This video is a tool to do just that. I need you to share it, send it to your family, your friends, your pastor, your elected officials. Don't let the algorithms bury this information. Liking this video and subscribing helps, but sharing it is an act of defiance. It is you joining us in the fight. This is not about hating Muslims. Millions of Muslims came to America to escape their very oppression that political Islam wants to impose here. This is about opposing a political ideology, a totalitarian system incompatible with a free society. Our fight is not with a people, it's with a doctrine. The founders of this nation pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for the cause of liberty. They built a republic, and as Benjamin Franklin warned, it is up to us to keep it. The enemy is at the gates. They think we're weak, decadent, and divided. They think our love of comfort is greater than our love of freedom. It is the duty of our generation to prove them wrong. The 100-year war for America's soul is here. The only question is, which side are you on? Wake up, speak out, and stand for freedom. And as even Joe said earlier, like he was saying, is that we're not against Islams or Muslims in general. It's the radical ideology of it. Unfortunately, that's the loudest sect of it. And right now looks like the largest sect of it in America and what we're seeing over in Europe and everything that's going on. And the UK and Switzerland and New Zealand and stuff. So for any Muslims that are listening, y'all that aren't on the radical side, that don't want Sharia law, that don't want the caliphate, y'all need to get louder. Y'all need to come out and show people who the religion really is, and stop and outweigh the radicals. Because if you don't, it's going to end up turning to the hate, into fear, into racism and Islamophobia. Because the fact that, unfortunately, CARE and the radical ones have been allowed to take what is an Islamophobia and labeled as that.
I agree, and I think your call to arms, if you want to call it that, your call to action. I'd say, the way we learn from other human beings. None of even when we create art, like, or music, we're using it from inspiration. Every idea I have, it comes from a collection of different things that have been passed on to me, as well as, inspiration directly from the higher power that we have. So that being said, our ideas are like a virus. So it's not just sharing and reliking. It's on a daily basis. We need to be bolder. We need to speak out. We need to, enough is enough. We need to start pushing back. We need to start, like, and I'm not saying attack people. I'm not saying be argumentative. I'm saying love them, set an example, and choose conflict over comfort, choose freedom over comfort. That's what you have to do. And that's something that you do every single day. And the aggregate effect of enough people doing that is, it's synergy, right? An object moving at one speed goes a certain, rate, and then you push on it, it doubles the speed, right? The more pebbles that we have, the more pieces of snow that we have falling down the hill, the greater the avalanche. And that's what we hope to achieve. So every person here has power to do that.
Yeah, and it's why it's the same thing with, like, Brett, and it's funny, and it's going to the other part we're talking about Bilderberg. But the reason the Democrats are sitting there and literally calling everybody out, or President Trump, or people out for what they're actually guilty of, is because they want you to think they want you to look over here and not pay attention to here. So they want to call people who are calling out what's really going on Islamophobia, because they don't want you, even though they don't want the Muslim Brotherhood winning, it's helping them. And that's all they care about, is their ultimate goal. So they're going to call you the Islamophobe when they really don't want it either. They're going to call you the anti-democratic or anti-democracy or the destruction of democracy, when in reality, President Trump and the Republican Party and people like Greg Abbott are actually trying to save the democratic form of government that we have, which is actually a constitutional republic. It's why we have a Congress that's supposed to move slowly and not be able to move fast. It's why the administrative state is unconstitutional. It's why executive orders are unconstitutional. It's why a lot of the stuff that the president is having to do now, because Congress won't do, is only supposed to be done by Congress. But and funny is, a lot of people say, well, it's President Trump's breaking the Constitution. No, he's just using the tools that the Democrats gave him. Because people forget that from the 1900s to about 1912, 1913 to about the late 1970s, the Democrats controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate for almost over 70 years. And yet I thought Republicans wasn't the way to go. I thought democratic forms of government and progressive government is the way to go. But why has our country not gotten any better? Why has our country gotten more debt if they're the solution?
Yeah, I think that's definitely true of free trade. I think that's so many people are supporting of this system of free trade that has completely, stolen the wealth from our country. And that's not to say wealth is important, because Jesus said love of money is the root of all evil. But that is to say, like, how is it that we as a country, we as a people, can make the world a better place when our house isn't in order, right? It's not possible. So
yeah, why are we expected to pay for, so all the other countries can pay 75% less for their medicines? Why are we expected to pay 3 times more than everybody else to cover the cost of R&D? So all the other social countries can have their cheap medications, so their social programs can work. Because the funny thing is if which Trump has tried to do, and if it works, and it's to where everybody's now, obviously, we're not going to see medication prices drop 3/4, but if everybody was paying on equal footing, the majority of free healthcare governments, and that's a whole other podcast we can do, are going to go bankrupt because obviously, and this, I got into this the other night. I don't support it, but it's the truth. This fact is like everybody goes, "Oh, we're going to find cure for cancer and a cure for AIDS and all this," and I'm like, I would love to see Trump get that happen, but it's not going to because one, I think it's people. I've seen plays on it. Was on a forgot what cartoon show, but it was talking about why would we cure you when treating is a lifetime of money. But also the other fact is everybody will tell you, especially on the far left and on the the progressive side, that we're overpopulating the world, that we've got too many people here. Well, if you take the two diseases that are responsible for the most deaths in the world, cancer and AIDS, outside and diabetes, those three right there, and you cure them, and now everybody, not just 20 or 30% of the population, but 100% of the population is living to 80, 90, 100 years old. You're going to have some serious problems with population numbers. Your population is going to skyrocket. So they're not going to let it out, even if they find it, because of that fact. I mean, that's a whole other debate. Is they would rather treat you because then they can decide who gets it and who doesn't. Now, obviously, they haven't found it yet because a lot of people or conspiracy theorists will be like, oh, they already have cures for AIDS. They already have cures for cancer and blah, blah, blah. Well, explain to me then why one of the richest men in the world and one of the leading founders of the Bilderberg Group and the creator of Apple was not cured. Why was he allowed to, if they had already found it, why was he allowed to die of cancer? Because he wouldn't have been. If he had gotten cured, I might believe it. But considering they let the founder of Apple and one of the greatest minds of our time die young of pancreatic cancer, there's no cure.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything. I've got to get going in the next couple of minutes. I just got a text from my dad that was kind of important. But right. Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. I think that it's also a travesty the way medicine and agricultural, like genetic strains and molecules that God created have somehow are now owned by people. They can genetically sequence me and own my genes. What is that like? Again, this is we have just a huge disconnect from reality, and we have to get back to the core, back to the basics. And that's one point I want to make about Sharia law that I didn't say earlier that I was thinking before we came to this conversation is no usury, no interest. I support that. If we could bring that and get rid of this system of credit slavery we have here, that would be great. But
all right, well, we were almost. My conclusion was like a half a minute, almost a minute over. Was it like 1 hour and 1 minute? So I think we cut talking at 58 minutes. Next time we'll have to do it around 56, 57. But please, everybody that's still in here, check out the website scrolling across the bottom of the screen. You can get all of has all the links for the web social media sites on there. The Facebook page, YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, and X. Like I said, starting Wednesday, starting after this show, we will be going live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. unless it changes to 6. I'll let y'all know, but it's going to be every Wednesday at that time. We will be still broadcasting on Rumble. It's not this Rumble, but we'll be broadcasting on the Patriots Prayer Network Rumble. We'll still be broadcasting on our X and our YouTube. We'll still be broadcasting on our Facebook, but the YouTube right now, we're not going to do live. We're going to try it, upload it next day and see if that helps with the analytics like it says it will. And then, like I said, we'll also be now broadcasting on the Patriots Prayer Network, which is via, I forgot the name of it now again, Q Broadcasting. So thank y'all for tuning in and watching. Please hit that follow, like, share button or subscribe button, and y'all have a good night, and we will see y'all next Wednesday.